Okay, once again, welcome and thank you for spending the afternoon with us. Just real quick before we get started on does your cyber hygiene need a brush up? We are very excited to share our wealth of knowledge here at the Center for Cybersecurity. You guys are going to hear from Dr. Eman El-Sheikh, who is the center's director, in just a moment. Before I turn it over to her, I just wanted to go through a couple of housekeeping items before we start. Again, warm welcome to everyone joining us. If you haven't noticed, you are all placed on mute until the end of the session, and we do plan on opening up a general Q&A where you can ask your questions aloud to our panelists. If you are having any problems with audio or video, please send us a chat message and let us know, and we have our team members standing by, and we're here to help you. This meeting is being recorded, so that was supposed to join and weren't able to make it, just let us know and we will make sure that they get that link emailed to them. Of course, we want you to learn something today and have fun, and we welcome your feedback. Tell us what you found most applicable and you plan on implementing at home. And finally, thank you so much for attending. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Eman El-Sheikh for a welcome and to tell us a little bit about the UWF Center for Cybersecurity. Eman?
Thank you, Gretchen, and thank you everyone for joining us. Please, as Gretchen mentioned, let us know if you can't hear me or if along the way you can't hear any of us. We are thrilled to have you all join us today, and we hope that everyone is staying well. The Center for Cybersecurity at UWF launched the Cybersecurity for New Normal initiative to help our communities, our university, and our partners enhance cybersecurity, particularly as we've all been in the same situation, moving more operations remote or online recently. We've seen an increase in all sorts of cyber attacks and breaches and phishing and malware, and we want to help you stay cyber secure. The center serves as a national science security agency and DHS designated Center of Academic Excellence in Cybersecurity. And one of our goals is always to share our expertise, best practices, and knowledge with our community, with our students, certainly our faculty and staff. So we're excited to have you all on board for our first webinar as part of the Cybersecurity for New Normal initiative. I'd like to turn it back over to Gretchen Clarke, who is the newest member of our team. She joined our team recently as Associate Director for Business Development and Strategy. Thank you, Gretchen.
Thanks, Eman. Just real quick, I want to go over the agenda for today's presentation. Eman, thank you for that introduction to the center. I'm excited to be a part of the team and just the wealth of knowledge at the center. Real quick, we're going to do speaker introductions before we get started, and then Steven Bazzell is going to talk a little bit about cyber hygiene training tips. After every tip, we are going to open up the floor for some Q&A via the chat or Q&A window. So if you would like your question read aloud after each tip, I'd be happy to do that for you. And then again, we will open up for general questions at the end. And then we will do a brief adjourn and wrap up by Dr. El-Sheikh, and we will be in contact with you if you need further training or assistance. Okay. Today's speakers, you already heard from Dr. Eman El-Sheikh. A little bit about Eman. She is the director of the center, and she's also a thought leader in artificial intelligence and machine learning. She's published multiple articles and books, including most recently Computer and Network Security Essentials with Springer Publishing. Eman is a seasoned presenter who has delivered more than 100 talks at various industry, academia, and community events, and she holds a PhD in computer science. Dr. Tirthankar Ghosh is a senior faculty member for the center who has in both an MS and PhD in computer and electrical engineering. Tirthankar is an expert in anomaly detection and threat intelligence, and he has made it his mission to develop the next generation of cybersecurity talent and expand the capabilities of the workforce in this field. He shares his security tips regularly on a blog. So you can find that at uwf.edu/cyberaware. Steven Bazzell served more than 10 years in the United States Air Force. Thank you, Steven, for your service. He was also a government contractor for Herbert Field. He is now the System Server Administrator and IT Trainer for the Center. He began his career in technology with a managed service provider where he spent time building and managing and servicing computers, installing operating systems, and providing critical IT infrastructure. And I'll be your host today. Again, if there's anything we can do for you, or if you're having any sort of technical difficulties, please message us in chat and we'd be happy to help you. And with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Steven to start our training.
Okay, so we're going to go over some basics just to get everybody up to speed on an elementary level. These are basics to start from, just like every other sport or venture you may start on. It's always good to go back to the basics. So first topic for today is passwords and passphrases. So it goes without saying, do not use the same password across multiple accounts, especially if you use the same username as well. And the reason for that is because all it takes is for one of those accounts that you have with whatever service it is to become compromised. Then all of the other accounts become compromised as well. So if you use the same username and password on Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube, at work, your email, your Gmail, just name them all. All I have to do is be able to compromise one of those. And a lot of times, a lot of these credentials are released into the world just because there is a data breach. And malicious parties actually gather this data and put them into giant databases, and they're going to try these credentials across multiple platforms. So that's why it's good to use a different password with the different systems that you may be using. And of course, change your passwords regularly. Now, we're not saying you should change them necessarily every week, month, quarterly, yearly. It all depends on the service and system that you're on. All right, so this slide, I don't want anybody to pay attention or get wrapped up in all of the very specific types of hashes and encryptions that they have here. This is just a slide from a company called TerraHash Corporation. They specialize in cracking passwords. That is what they do. They build specialized systems to do this. And most people think, oh, well, they've got to be running supercomputers, right? No one's ever going to crack my password. No, these are within the real realm of reasonable prices for companies that need to do this. And you can actually lease out time on their servers. So out of all the different types of encryption and hashes and passwords, basically this is from TerraHash Corporation saying, if your password is 4, 5, 6, and so on characters long, they don't care what type of characters, whether they be uppercase, lowercase, numbers, symbols, so on and so forth. They're just saying, if it's this long and it's this type of password, here's how easily we can crack it. And you can see here that once we get to a password length of about 10 characters, even with their equipment, depending on what type of password it is, it's going to take them some time. And you see how once we start incrementing to 11 characters, even the weakest type of password is still going to take them 5 years to crack. So you can see where no one's going to rent out their expensive servers for 5 years just to crack a single password. So this goes into our next slide, which is much simpler, but it still takes the same character type and password length into account. So some of you might have heard, oh, don't use simple passwords. Don't use short passwords. Oh, passwords should be long. Well, let's get into some specifics. So this is a simpler table from my next solution. And this shows, okay, in a similar fashion, if we have the number of characters on the left side you see here, and how easy is it in general terms to crack a password if you only have numbers only and X number of characters. And as you see, as we start adding in and we mixing in uppercase, lowercase, numbers, symbols, and again, if we hit that 10 character plus mark and we're using numbers, upper and lowercase letters and symbols, it now becomes extremely difficult and very time-consuming in order to simply crack a password. So if you were to ask, well, how long should my password be? What should I put in my password? Well, you can see here already, we're going to kind of recommend it be about 10 characters or more. And to be a little bit more specific about how to make those passwords, here on this next slide here, we're going to show you what a strong password should be. Because we're talking about strong passwords, but we want them to be a password that you can kind of remember somehow. So for example, this first password on the top here, good. It's 21 characters long, which seems, whoa, hold on, that is really long. That is twice as long than the 10 characters you said that we needed. Well, but here's an example of an easy password that is both strong and easy to remember. So in some older material, you may have seen someone say, well, you should never use anything related to numbers that someone can type you. Well, in most cases, that is true. But in this particular instance, because we're obfuscating it so much, say you graduated high school in 03 or graduated college in 03. Okay, 03. I like waffles and steak fries. So waffle-steak fries. And you notice I capitalized the first letter of each word. And then the ampersand and the asterisk at the end there are the numbers 7 and 8. But maybe that's the year you were born. So again, this is a very strong password. It's 21 characters long, and it's something I can remember. So that is a good, strong password. Now let's move on to the next one. The next one's a good password, but also bad. I'll tell you why. Yes, it's 18 characters long. It is long. No one's going to kind of brute force this one, but it's so random that unless you have a really good mnemonic that you've used to come up with this, it's going to be so difficult to remember that what are you going to do? You're going to write it down. You're going to be the person that has a sticky note underneath your keyboard with all your passwords on it. And that's not what we want here. The next password is bad. Even though it's 15 characters long, it's going to be something that isn't very unique. So Miami Dolphins 86. Okay, there's probably many, many people that have used Miami Dolphins and some other number. Maybe 86 is when you were born, graduate high school, graduate college, and it's going to be tried. So in that instance, that is not a good password. Plus, it doesn't have any special characters. It has no uppercase letters. And the last one is a really bad password. Password 1234. Yes, it's 12 characters long. I have at least one uppercase. I have some numbers in there, but no special symbols. And also, password 1234 is a very, 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 very commonly used password, even in today's time. So one thing to remember is the rule of twos. So if you have 2 uppercase, 2 lowercase, 2 numbers, and 2 special characters in your password, okay, we've met that requirement we saw on some slides further back saying, hey, have a variety of all of these. You're already at 8 characters. Add 2 more, you're at our 10 character, and you have 2 of each. You're going to be pretty good to go. And password managers can be very helpful to manage a lot of your passwords. Just make sure you pick a password manager that has good reputation. It's solid. They're going to encrypt everything. And that can help you have many different passwords across all of those different accounts and stay safe. As an example here, one thing you can do is actually check your passwords. There are many places to do this. And actually in some documentation, like I've listed here, this NIST documentation, they actually recommend that you try your passwords against a database that has some known passwords. Now, this is one example from haveibeenpwned.com. And I went there and typed in password 1234. And as you can see from this snippet here, it has been found in over 3,736 data breach databases thus far. So yes, believe it or not, that password has been actually used in real world instances and has been part of data breaches. So don't use that password. So at this time, this finishes this particular topic. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Clarke and the panelists for your questions.
Thanks, Steven. Some really great tips. I actually did not know about this website until we were preparing for this session, and I actually went in and checked a couple of my passwords. Thankfully, I was okay, but I did check an old password that I used to use a lot across multiple accounts and logins, and actually found that one at this site. So that's pretty cool. So for those in the audience, if you haven't tried this tool, I would recommend that you do it. So this is an awesome tip, Steven. We have one question from Henry Ellenberg. How would you rate the security of something such as a physical password notebook in a secure location versus an application such as OneSafe/LastPass? Who wants to take that one?
I'd be happy to chime in, I think, and certainly welcome the panelists to do that as well. I think that's a great question, and there are always trade-offs either way. So think about, so password managers have very secure mechanisms and encryption, and can easily be accessible by you, but not others. That's the kind of benefit of them. So it makes it easier to kind of remember and access wherever you are, from whichever device. But of course, as we've seen with breaches, even sometimes password managers are targets. So you have to bear that in mind. I think a secure kind of password recorder or notebook, again, the pros and cons would be, can you access that and can you keep it secure, right? Can you get to that when you need to remember your passwords? And can you do that in a way without then breaching that data? And certainly turn it over to the other panelists as well.
Tirthankar, do you have anything to add?
Well, the only point I want to add is you have to weigh your risk and your return. So there are risks involved with everything. So password managers have risks as well. Some password managers have been the target of man-in-the-middle attack. But you have to keep in mind that the probability or chances of those attacks are very low, especially if you're using a password manager. Make sure you use a very, very strong password and use a two-factor or multi-factor authentication using some kind of either a token or some of the tokens that you can use, like a Google Authenticator, some research has shown that they are vulnerable to man-in-the-middle attack as well. But again, as I said, it's the pros and cons. Everything has pros and cons. You have to weigh the risk and benefit that you want to use. Password managers, there are tons of benefits of using password managers. They can generate random passwords for you. You don't have to remember them, but you have to make sure you secure it with a very strong password and multi-factor. I use a password manager all the time. And there are tons of password managers that are pretty good. Most of them, they're comparable to each other. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We had one more question that relates to this topic, and two were mentioned, OneSafe and LastPass. Are there any other password manager tools that you would recommend?
I use LastPass. I would revert to Steven. Steven, I know he knows quite a few of the password managers as well. I have only used LastPass for the past several years. I haven't tried any one of the other ones. So I cannot do much of a pros and cons analysis.
Eman, do you have a favorite?
I think I would kind of try to keep it general instead of recommending specific products, and just kind of emphasize what Tirthankar mentioned about, pros and cons of every approach. I do want to add one thing about password strength testers is I would caution people about using your actual passwords to test in those tools. Be careful about the tools that you test. Some of those tools could be used to mine or could be breached, and then your passwords are now exposed. So for password strength tester tools, and there's others out there in addition to the one that Steven has on the slide right now, I would suggest testing the concepts that he mentioned about using words only versus words with numbers, uppercase versus lowercase, the combination of all of the above. And that will help guide your strategy for developing passwords. but not actually typing your actual passwords into them.
Awesome, awesome. Stephen, we had a few more questions, and I'm going to encourage our panelists to answer those so that you can go ahead and move on as we're keeping our time in check. So go ahead, Stephen. Eman and Tirthankar, if you could check the chat for us, that would be great.
All right, thank you very much. So moving on, our next topic is social media. So social media is everywhere. Everyone's using social media. You can't go anywhere without seeing something about social media. Some of you may even have been informed about this webinar through social media. So, since it's so prevalent, we want to give you some tips to stay safe. So, one thing you can do, you've probably seen this, most of you probably already have, is, if possible, set your account to private status. So that way it's not publicly viewable, and only invite those that you know to be able to see your private content. Also, provide minimal account information. There may be some social media platforms that you want to put your information on there. And there's maybe some that you're just like, oh, I just want to have an account just so I can read this or stay up to date with, you know, my buddy John or whatever it may be. So provide the minimal account content needed in order to set up an account. And data breaches, it happens. No one is immune to it. Anybody who's curious can simply do a quick internet search on Facebook, MySpace, Twitter, Snapchat, so on and so forth, and you'll see somewhere, somehow, there was a data breach, whether it was a malicious party found their way in, or something simple as, oh, oops, it somehow got published and then leaked because someone didn't properly handle the data, and now it's all over the internet. So you can see there all the different millions of accounts that their private information was made publicly available. And by keeping up to date with what's going on with those social media accounts that you like, that's going to really help you. To say you have a Facebook account and tomorrow Facebook says, oh no, we had a data breach and 100 million accounts got out. Well, if you know you have an account there, first thing you should do is go in there, change the password. If you use that same password somewhere else, guess what? It's now compromised. So go change those passwords everywhere else. One other thing you can do is to use decoy data. So this was actually suggested by Highland Risk Services, their cyber insurance company, where they said, again, like I was saying, provide minimal account information to set up something. You can also provide decoy data. In other words, your account or Facebook account or whatever it is, there's nothing legally binding you to say, I must use my actual information. All you have to do is a quick internet search to find, oh, wow, yes, there are a lot of actual bad actors on these social media platforms that are acting like, oh, I'm John Smith. No, you're actually really a nationalist from a company, or I'm sorry, a country that is trying to do something malicious. And so similar, I'm not saying you should do anything similarly malicious, but you can use decoy data if needed to set up an account. Say maybe they're demanding that you tell them your birthday. Okay, well, I don't know why I do that, just so I can say set up some simple account at XYZ social media, but I'm going to say, oh, January 1st of whatever. The other thing you can do is set restrictive privacy settings, similar to saying my account is private. Again, across social media and other platforms, if you can, go in there and set some of these settings to be private. And I don't mean necessarily who can see it, but also, if you look at some of the privacy settings of some social media platforms, even your internet browser, they usually have a privacy setting that automatically has checkboxes marked by, oh, I voluntarily will give some of my browsing data to said company for testing, evaluation, so on and so forth. Well, you can opt out of that by going into those privacy settings and disabling them. Because a lot of times, yes, they may be using them for a good purpose to improve their platform, but also some of this data, as we've seen in the news lately from big social media giants, is actually being sold to other companies. So if you don't want that to happen, go in and remove those. Next on social media is being mindful of what you share. Because even if you have, say, social media account platforms across many different areas, and you're really excited about this vacation, oh man, this is going to be great. I'm going to go to the Bahamas. It's going to be fantastic. You know, the beaches are going to be great. Water will be beautiful. Well, if you post that everywhere, now everybody knows, you're not going to be home during this time. Oh, you said you're going next week. Okay. I'm not saying any of your friends would break into your home, but if that information were to get out that you are really looking forward to that vacation, and it's next week, all it takes is for one person to hear or see that information, and if that person listening in or eavesdropping gets a hold of that, now they know, great time to break into that person's home because they're not going to be there. So just keep information like that, you know, in the back of your head when you're posting information like that, and be mindful of who can see your information. Same thing goes for posts of pets, favorite colors, foods, places. That's what we do. That's what we post pictures of, is this weird-looking food that we're going to eat, right? Well, if I'm going onto these social media platforms and you don't have your settings on private, I can start gathering data about you. Oh, they have a pug named Betsy. Okay. Favorite color is blue. Neat. Okay. Oh, right, that's neat. Well, what do you think is going to happen if you lose your password? You say, I forgot my password. What happens a lot of times? Sometimes they have those security questions that they ask you. What are those questions? Where was I born? What were my parents' names? What's my pet's name? What's my favorite color? You know, what's my favorite food? All you have to do is go combing through some of the information that you freely put out there, and I can pretty much answer those questions. Same with your childhood memories. Oh, where was I born? Where did I grow up? So on and so forth. So that information can be used to get into those forgot my passwords. And the big thing right now, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic here, is graduation. What are we going to do about it? How do we post all the information? We want to be proud of our graduates, whether it be high school or college. Well, again, all this information. I know when you graduated. I know what your name is. I know what your school's name is. I know your school's mascot. And depending on the social media platform and how you've linked to other people, I now know who your friends are. So again, that goes back into that, well, if I forget my password, what is it going to ask me? Oh, when did I graduate, name of school, so on and so forth. So those things just keep in mind. So again, that's the end of the social media topic. So I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Clarke and the panelists.
Thanks, Steven. In the spirit of time, I do not see any questions with regard to social media. So I think we should move on to the next tip. And if any questions do come up about social media, we will take them at the end. Thanks, Steven.
All right, sounds good. So moving on. Video conferencing and video conferencing etiquette. Right now, we're all working from home, learning from home. So Zoom is a huge platform. Now, we're not bashing Zoom. And please don't get us wrong. We just want to be mindful about the different platforms we use, and we want you to be aware of one of the most popular platforms out there. Zoom does have some security issues as of lately, especially if you've been paying attention to the news there. They've had hackers be able to get into some rooms. They've had accounts sold on the dark web. There's many actual corporations are actually banning the use of Zoom for right now. And you've probably heard of Zoom bombing. That seems to be a big thing, especially prevalent in the Zoom rooms that the schools are using. Now, Zoom is working on fixing their vulnerabilities, and there's a lot of fixes they have been incorporating. There is an update right now to Zoom, Zoom 5.0. If you're not using it, please go download it, because come May 30th, they will force you to use Zoom 5.0, or else your Zoom won't work. And Zoom 5.0 does incorporate some of these vulnerability fixes. Next on our list here is, okay, well, I kind of scared you a little bit about Zoom. Please don't worry about being too scared. Just want you to be aware of some issues. So to stay safe, whether you're using Zoom or WebEx or Google Hangouts or whatever it is, password protect your meetings if you can. Authenticate your users. In other words, invite them or have a registration. Sort of like this webinar. The only way to attend this webinar is to have a registration. And if you can set it up, make sure no one joins before the host can join. And disable participant screening sharing unless you need it for something like school or in the event that you're casting the screen sharing between hosts here. And a lot of times, depending on what platform you're using, there's a meeting ID. Sometimes by default, it's just your name or maybe your username. So webex.com/SBazzell for me. Well, if I know that, then it's very easy. Anytime you have a meeting, I can just keep plopping your name in there until it works. So most platforms do have an option that randomly generates the data. So they're always different. So that way someone can't guess what your meeting is and get in when you don't want it to be. Next on the list is disable file sharing in the meeting. So unless you need to, use some of the other services that are really designed for file sharing. They're they work better, the more secure, and still meet that as objective there. And set up the room however you need it. So if you need to be the only one talking, make sure the room starts where no one can share their camera or their mics. Just that way it's a nice, smooth event or meeting you may have. From the security standpoint of things, always update your applications just like you would with your operating system. Like I was saying, Zoom is working on fixes. Well, the only way you get some of those fixes is to update. So go and update your desktop video conferencing application, regardless of what platform you're using. And again, the personal details on the account, again, don't share information that you don't absolutely need to. Now, going into some etiquette, some of these are pretty obvious, but sometimes people need reminders. So keep your head in the game, minimize your distractions, really focus on the conference or the meeting you're at. Mute your mic when you're not actively talking, so if people don't hear you crunching on the food you're eating or drinking that water. There's been many reports. All you have to do is an internet search for funny video conferencing moments, and there goes the rest of your afternoon. I just put one in that I thought was kind of funny and scary at the same time. Goes in line with security, where there's an actual report of a participant that was in a meeting, and they did not mute their mic. And during the conference, they decided to order something over the phone. I can't remember if it was pizza or a vacation, but everyone in that conference heard her name, her credit card number, its expiration date, the little CVC code on the back. So already her credit card has been compromised, just like that, just because she didn't mute the mic. Control your pets. Everyone loves seeing your cats and dogs, but if you have a really talkative parrot, probably not a good idea to do your video conferencing in the same room there. And always be mindful of your background. If you have boisterous children that play in the background that we can all hear, and running back and forth and hitting each other with plastic toys, it's funny, but it's also distracting. And be aware of any people that may be walking in your background and what is on your background. Do you have an art wall? Do you have particular artwork that some people may seem or may take it to be a little distasteful? Probably not a good idea to have it up. So it's always good if you are in a place where there are multiple people and they may walk back behind you, make them aware. Say, hey, I'm having a video conference in the next 5 minutes. It's going to go for about an hour or so. Just, keep down, don't interrupt me, that kind of thing. So with that, that's the end of this particular topic, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Clarke and the panelists for any questions.
Thanks, Steven. We've had quite a few messages about Zoom. One in particular, as it applies to all video conferencing. How safe is it to share files inside of a video conference?
So I can start answering that question and keeping it a more general. Is we all know and we all read in the news that Zoom had a lot of vulnerabilities that were exploited, but Zoom has done a phenomenal job in addressing some of those issues. And I recently had a blog entry in my blog as well, where you can see how Zoom has addressed some of those vulnerabilities. For example, initially they were not using any end-to-end encryption, but now they have started using 128-bit AES encryption, which was recently upgraded in Zoom 5.0 to a 256-bit GCM mode encryption, which is pretty strong. So if you are sharing files using the Zoom client, then you can pretty much expect your file to be end-to-end encrypted when you are transferring the files to the other end. Zoom has also, however, Zoom's key management is still a problem, but I'm not going into the technical details of those. Zoom had a problem with the Windows user credential dumping that they fixed. They claimed they had fixed that. Zoom was found to secretly steal data from users' LinkedIn profiles. They fixed that as well. The Zoom's iPhone app, you probably are aware of that, they were sending users' data to Facebook through the login with Facebook SDK. And when that complaint came out, they fixed that as well. So Zoom has done a phenomenal job in addressing some of the questions. However, some of the Zoom servers are in China, and now some key management issues. Some keys are being transferred to China, but those would be fixed as well, and we have to live with some of those risks.
Thank you.
I'd like to add that it also, I think, a key factor to consider is the nature of the information that you're sharing, right? So if you're having a discussion among friends about, what to do while we're all social distancing, that's one thing. But if you're conducting work or talking about financial or other kind of sensitive information or work-related information, that's when you really need to be careful. And so just kind of another kind of general advice or suggestion is, look at the security features of the web conferencing tools and compare and kind of decide on which one you can use for more security for sensitive or work-related communications. And so you might ask, well, how do I know which one's better? So coincidentally, just last week, the NSA released guidelines on the security and safely using web conferencing tools for telework and for communications. And we'll share that link at the end of this session, and it's also on our CyberAware page. We'll share that link as well. And if you look at their guidelines, it lists a lot of the major teleconferencing tools, including Zoom, and provides kind of a check sheet for which security features each one provides. So that'll help you kind of make a better, more informed decision about which tool to use.
Thank you, guys. In the spirit of time, we do have a couple more questions, but I'm going to save those until the end if I can. So, Steven, can I turn it back over to you to continue on with our tips?
Absolutely. All right. So, next up is phishing. And I don't mean the bad kind. This is phishing for information. So, in case some of you may be unaware of what I'm talking about, the official definition is the fraudulent attempt to obtain sensitive information about a person or organization, such as their usernames, passwords, credit card information, and so on, by posing as a trustworthy entity in an electronic communication. Basically, someone's trying to trick you into giving away personal information in email or even social media by posing as someone you know or who you think is important or trustworthy. So, phishing emails. A lot of times you're getting these emails and it looks interesting, like, hey, it looks like it's coming from HR, but I don't know, it kind of seems suspicious. But they're going to make it seem like it's very important. Oh no, click here, your account's been compromised, but you've got to click this link and fill out this form to unlock your password. And maybe it looks like it's coming from Bank of America. Maybe it looks like it's coming from the IT department of where you work. Or maybe even the CEO of a corporation that you work for or that you do business with. And these are all very real and real-world instances where this has happened. People have made their emails look like it came from a CEO, down to even a signature, and how they even would talk during a normal email. So if an email seems suspicious, best to be on the cautious side and delete it. Or talk to that person, call that person who sent you that, whether it's a company or an individual. And don't use the information in the email to contact them back. Actually, call them via a phone number you know is trustworthy. So if it's Bank of America, call Bank of America's phone number from either something you have already written down because you deal business with them all the time, or look them up. Say, hey, did you send me this email here? Oh no, we didn't. Or sometimes maybe it really does just seem suspicious, but they did send it to you. So it's always good to verify it is a expected email. So what we always say is don't click on the link, because sometimes those links can and are used for malicious purposes. So unless you're expecting it, no, you did not win anything from Publishers Clearinghouse. And there is no Nigerian prince, well, at least not the kind that send you emails saying that they want to send you millions of dollars. So a lot of people equate that to an older scam that's been running decades back, but it's actually older than that. If you want to do a quick internet search, look for Spanish prisoner. Around 1898 is where it started. So this scam isn't anything new. It's just moved on to a different medium. So, well, what if we get an email as there's a link in there. We think it might be suspicious. We think it might be okay. No. Well, there are actually some places that for free you can go test this out. So I have these websites down here. You go URL to PNG, URL void, virustotal.com. They're all places where you can copy that link, paste that link in one of those services, and they will actually go run tests. Some of them, like URL to PNG, literally just shows you a picture of what would happen if you were to click on it. And URL void and VirusTotal actually do a little bit more analysis to say, this makes callbacks to some suspicious servers. I don't know. This isn't right. And some of them will actually give you a sort of like a validity rating or a danger rating, saying, this is pretty safe. It doesn't come up on any of our servers. So just be safe, be careful. If you think it's suspicious, don't click on the link, because a lot of times this is how ransomware spreads like wildfire. So that's the end of our phishing topic. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Clarke and the panelists.
Thanks, Steven. Janet Rice McCoy asked, are there additional issues we need to be aware of when checking email and messages in public places, such as airports?
Well, yes, absolutely. So first of all, simpler things like shoulder surfing, somebody peeping over your shoulder when you are checking your emails, typing your passwords. One other comment is using a public Wi-Fi in a coffee shop or a bookstore in the airport. That always poses problem. Now, even if you are using SSL or TLS to communicate to secure websites, using public Wi-Fi can still pose like a man-in-the-middle type of attack that you may not be aware of. One thing is, whenever you are visiting a website, if you are clicking on a link or typing it in a URL on your web browser, if you get a warning of certificate cannot be validated, it's always a good idea to pay attention to that and not visit that website. Because if your browser is up to date and if your browser cannot validate the certificate, then probably it's not advisable to ignore that message and go to the web page.
Eman, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I completely agree and recommend, be very careful and cautious with public Wi-Fis. It's also very easy for hackers to watch information being shared over public Wi-Fi, as well as to imitate Wi-Fi. When you're connecting to the guest Wi-Fi at your hotel, for example, or airport, how are you sure that that is not that is actually the hotel's Wi-Fi? So, especially for any sensitive information, recommend avoiding. And like Steven said earlier, can't emphasize enough, don't click on the link, right? That's the worst. That most of the major issues we've seen have been inadvertent clicks on links. So if you're not sure, don't do it. If it sounds too good to be true, it is.
Thanks, Eman. Thank you, Tirthankar. Steven, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and I will save the other questions submitted for the general Q&A.
All right, thank you very much. So our last topic is going to be some suggestions and maybe some helpful tips concerning parental guidance and controls. So if you weren't already aware, children just aren't as cautious as adults. As children, we're pretty naive. We get that email and go, wow, this Nigerian prince wants to give me $1 million to help him out. Yeah, I'm going to go help him out. Well, they need some training just like we do. So just know that you are responsible for your child's browsing and browsing habits. So it's good to educate them just as you are being educated. And in some instances, adults can be held liable for minors' illegal internet activities. So it's good to be mindful and not overbearing, but always be good to know what your children are doing when they're on the internet. So there are some parental controls and locks that can help you out, especially in these times where they're supposed to be learning from home, not playing from home. So streaming services, almost every streaming service, well, all streaming services that I use, they have a way where I can have a section that is specifically for children. And I can put on there what ratings of shows or movies they're allowed to watch. Computers, you can set a parental control on computers, phones, even gaming services, whether it's PlayStation, Xbox, Microsoft Family, so on and so forth. A lot of these have some statistics that they can give you that are showing, are your children playing right now? Are they really studying when they said they were studying? Kind of hard to play, Halo 3 at the same time when you told me you were studying for a test. And some of these actually have apps for those services. And I'm talking more to these game services where I can just use my phone, pull up the app and go, they're playing right now? Yeah, I'm going to turn that right off. Plus, you can control what content they're available to see as well. So if they have their own, say, Xbox accounts to play with friends or whatever, but you don't want them to be able to see ads or be able to download or purchase games that are, say, over a certain rating, you can do that as well. And even though these are all tips that we're telling you to help protect them from particular content and keeping them on track with school versus playing 24/7, it's always good to also educate them as well as to why this is important that you're doing that. And moving on to your children and work issues here. So only you should be using your work issue computing device. There are many instances, especially as of late, where people have brought home their work, tablet, laptop, computer, whatever, and they've left the screen just there and they're logged in. And I'm sure most of you have at some time been reminded, hey, when you're done or you walk away from your computer, it's always good to lock the screen or log out when you're done. Well, many people have become comfortable at home. We all are very comfortable at home. It's nice. And we think, oh, I'm not at work. People aren't going to come shoulder surf, right? Well, your children don't know any better. So they're going to come over and go, oh, look, mouse, look, keyboard. What happens when I click on this and that? There's been instances where an employee's child inadvertently started a Skype call with their CEO of the company. I bet that was pretty embarrassing. So be mindful of leaving your work laptop unattended, and it is definitely not recommended that you allow anybody else to use your work laptop or pretty much anything unless you are sitting right there looking over their shoulder. And lastly, there's some Wi-Fi restrictions, similar to what we had mentioned earlier about setting up times and parental controls for gaming services, streaming services. Some wireless access points have very similar features. You can set up a separate, what is called an SSID. Basically what you see when you're trying to connect to your Wi-Fi, you can set up a different one just for your children to use. And with that, they have their own password, and you can control when that wireless signal is on. So you can make sure that, okay, well, during school, it is off. Or during certain times, turn it off, turn it on, and it's all automated. You just set it, and it will take care of itself. And sometimes they also give you some information back of, hey, wow, man, he's been streaming for 6 hours already. Maybe he should go outside and get some vitamin D. I don't know. So those are things to keep in mind as well. And if you need more information about that, that's a whole other topic, another session. So, and the very last thing is internet content. We know the internet is a fantastic place for information on all kinds of things, good and bad, unfortunately. So if you are going to have your children be able to, say, browse the internet with minimal supervision, if possible, please put some restrictions on there on what kind of web content they can see. So that ends my training here on these slides. I appreciate the time, and hopefully these tips have been useful for some of you. And I will now turn it over to Ms. Clarke and the panelists.
Thanks, Steven. Eman or Tirthankar, did you guys have anything to add on this tip or topic regarding parental controls and guidance?
Just one additional suggestion is that the strategy that Steven mentioned for Wi-Fi controls for your children is also, I think, useful for your guests. So keep in mind that the way that you set up your Wi-Fi is going to then give your children as well as guests or visitors access to your network. And so you may want to kind of develop a similar strategy for guests or family members as well.
Thank you. I'll just ask Tirthankar if he has anything before we move on to the next tip.
I don't have anything to add to all this.
Thank you. Okay, Steven, back to you.
All right. I'm pretty sure some of you realized that I forgot that there was a whole other topic. I have my script notes here, and I completely forgot that there was a last topic there. So this being our last topic, malware. Basically, what we used to call viruses and Trojans and spyware and adware, we can sum all of those up and say malware. So some quick scary statistics here. The World Health Organization has reported a 5-fold increase in their cyber attacks since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. And Brian Dye, who at the time was the Senior Vice President for Symantec, who makes Norton Antivirus and their other security products, in 2014 he stated only 45% of malware is actually being detected. Ransomware is on the rise. You can't go anywhere without hearing it somewhere in the news, especially last year. It was a really bad year. In 2019, the State of Email Security Report found that over 50% of organizations experienced a ransomware attack. The statistic from the previous year was only 27%. So you can see it is on a huge rise. And a lot of that ransomware, going back to phishing email, that's where it's going to get in. You could have all the great antivirus and anti-malware software, but all it takes is that one time where you click that link and it's going to take you somewhere and try and download that malware or ransomware or whatever it may be. So be mindful of those links there. And to help with that, it's a good idea. Back up all your information. That was a big contention during all of these ransomware attacks that were last year. Everybody asked, well, do I still have my data? Didn't you back it up? Isn't it safe? Isn't it encrypted? And a lot of these companies said, well, it was, but because of the ransomware and it encrypting all of that information, some of it even got into their backups, that data is now gone. And maybe it will be decrypted if you pay the ransom, maybe not. So, some tips to stay safe: update. Just like we were saying with your operating system and your web conferencing software, update your anti-malware software regularly. Make sure you use anti-malware software. So a lot of people will say, oh, well, I don't need software. I've got really good browsing habits. I don't really browse the web much. And wherever I go, it's always to legitimate, safe sites. And then on the opposite side of things, you have some people that say, oh, no, I've got antivirus software. I'm good. I don't care where I go or what website goes somewhere. Both of those mindsets are very dangerous. So yes, you should have good browsing habits. No, don't go to those questionable websites. Yes, it is good to have that software, but most importantly, it's combining the technology with the training and good cyber hygiene. Altogether, you will be best postured to prevent any type of malware infection, whether it be ransomware or spyware or adware. And at the end of the day, cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. So your responsibility, IT's responsibility, the cybersecurity analyst's responsibility, the CTO, the CEO, everyone plays a part. So with that, now I have concluded my training, and I appreciate the time and hope everybody has a good day.
Thanks, Steven. Steven, real quick before you go, we had a question. Is antivirus software and anti-malware software the same?
That's actually a very good question. And a lot of people have actually asked me that very question. They said, hey, what antivirus software should I get? Or, hey, this says it's not antivirus, but what does that mean? Well, some companies are now making the distinction and some aren't. Basically, the idea is some antivirus software really only looks after what we call a signature of a virus. And that may be all it does. Now, some good anti-malware software actually does quite a bit. It's looking at, yes, it's going to protect you from viruses and Trojans and some ransomware, things like that, but some higher-end anti-malware software does a little more. They employ what we call heuristics. In other words, it's behavioral. Even though it may not know of the existence of a particular piece of malware, that anti-malware software is able to look at it and go, that seems very suspicious. No piece of software should be accessing, say, this part of Windows or my Mac OS. And it can stop a piece of, say, new malware before it even gets out and everybody is aware of it and they have signatures and so on and so forth. So yes, there are distinctions. Yes, some antivirus software only does checks on known signatures of some viruses. So there are some, you know, quote unquote free anti-malware software out there. And I would say you kind of get what you pay for, but some of these new higher end anti-malware softwares actually employ AI and, you know, machine learning on checking the behavior of some of the software. And so it can go an extra mile. And I'm not going to name any particular ones because I don't want to make any recommendations for or against, but one good example would be WannaCry. Everybody's heard of it, really bad ransomware. It's actually still in some places. And there were only, I believe it was 3 anti-malware companies out there that were able to stop it before they knew it existed. And it's because their software employed those heuristics and machine learning to be able to say, hey, that's not right. And they were able to stop it before it was able to do anything malicious to their computer.
Thanks, Steven. One quick follow-up question, and I'm going to throw this to Dr. Ghosh. If anti-malware and antivirus software is checking your files, can it track your keystrokes and record your data?
So there are specific keystroke recording software or hardware that would specifically check your keystrokes or record your keystrokes. Typically, antivirus, anti-malware softwares are not programmed to do that because that's not one of their key functionalities. Does a anti-malware or an antivirus software do it behind the scene as a Trojan? That's a difficult question to answer unless you really check the source code and find out what they're doing. But if you are relying on some of the key leaders in that anti-malware space, I think you pretty much can trust them that they won't do that.
Thank you so much. As we enter our general Q&A, and in the spirit of just watching our time here, I know we're a little bit over. Thank you for hanging in there. We're just going to do a couple more questions that were submitted via chat, and then we will wrap this up with some final thoughts and words from Dr. Eman El-Sheikh. The last 2 questions are this. What browser would you recommend for the best privacy settings?
I take a different spin on that and say, you know, whatever browser you're using, check your privacy and security settings often. I think that applies to not just your browser, but your web conferencing tools, your social media apps. They're constantly changing the way that they implement algorithms to maximize reach, et cetera. And a lot of the responsibility lies on the user. You've got some control over kind of security, using two-factor, multi-factor authentication whenever possible, watching your privacy settings, et cetera. So that's kind of my bit, and certainly turn it over if we've got time for Tirthankar and Steven to chime in.
Well, I completely agree. I mean, there is no one single one that stands out. They have all gotten better over years. So check the privacy and security settings for each of the browser that you are using.
Like Steven said, cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility.
Good point. Good point.
I just want to add one little thing. If people were, and I'm not recommending because I don't even use this browser all the time, but there is one fun browser that I've used before called Brave, and they take it to the max. So much so that I found that for a lot of general browsing, it's fine, but there have been several instances where I've tried using Brave browser and it locks things down so much it doesn't work. So, you know, take that in consideration of how well it does it.
Thanks, Steven. Okay, another question about VPN usage. The asker just wants some general comments from each of the panelists, and do you recommend it?
Yes. But again, be careful of what VPN you are using. There are quite a few VPN products out there. And again, there are some comparative analysis, but when you read or do research on those comparative analysis, you have to also keep in mind who is publishing the comparative analysis. Some of the free VPNs have some problems that were being researched and published. But in general, to answer the question, yes, a VPN is definitely worth using, especially the one that is like a more of the commercial ones.
Thank you.
So just keep it short. I think I agree, particularly for if you are, you know, again, trying to access sensitive information, work-related information. It really always starts with usage, right? And then making sure that you're secure for the things that need the enhanced security.
Steven, what are your thoughts?
Yes, anytime I've gone, say, on a TDY or even vacation where I've been in the hotel, like I mentioned earlier, oh yeah, anytime I had my phone or my laptop with me, I always used a VPN just so that way I didn't worry about, okay, well, do I really trust the security of this wireless connection here? So I've always used a VPN, especially during those times. And now there are many out there. I say just go and research on your own, see which one that you feel comfortable with using. From a usability standpoint, I've used both PIA as well as ExpressVPN very successfully. So again, just do your homework and find out which one meets your needs.
Thanks, Steven. We got a thank you from several in our audience today for the tip on downloading or upgrading to Zoom 5.0. That got a lot of conversation. A lot of people are going to go and do that after this webinar. So thank you for sharing that. That was a good tip. The final question, and I'm going to have Dr. Eman El-Sheikh answer this one and then close our webinar today. So Eman, will these tips be available on our website? Can we make these slides and the recording of this webinar available?
Yes, absolutely. And we certainly plan to offer additional resources. So we welcome your feedback in terms of what you found helpful and other things that we could share or topics that we could discuss that would be helpful to you. And we will follow up to make this available on our website afterwards. If you're looking at the screen right now, the website that we've established for our cybersecurity for the New Normal initiative is uwf.edu/cyberaware. So that's where you can go for additional resources, including these links that you see here. I had mentioned earlier, for example, the NSA guidance that just came out on using collaboration tools securely. And we'll continue to update that page as well with resources as well as information on upcoming events. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. We hope that you have found this useful. We hope that it's been informative and fun, and we would certainly welcome your feedback. I want to also thank the UWF Center for Cybersecurity team. This has been a team effort to bring you this webinar. So thank you to Gretchen and Tirthankar, Steven, behind the scenes, Guy and Jim. We appreciate everyone's help to really kind of put this together. I encourage you to visit uwf.edu/cyberaware for more resources and information. You can also sign up for our newsletter on that page. At the bottom of the page, there's a link to join our newsletter and stay in touch and aware of what we're doing. And last but not least, stay well and cyber secure. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for joining us.